Hello, welcome to the Social Changemakers Podcast. I am your host, Khalilah Denny. I am here today to speak with another phenomenal individual who is here in our community. None other than Tamara Davis Brown. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes,
I feel like it's reciprocal because you were a guest on my podcast.
Yes,
so
I was. Speaking of your podcast, tell us about your podcast.
So my podcast, I'm actually proud to say I have not announced it yet, but I got news that I am ranked the 7th most ranking for political podcasts.
Oh,
so my podcast is All Politics is Local. The Maryland edition with me, your host, Tamara Davis Brown. So As soon as you finish listening to this, run over.
That's right.
Shameless plug.
Yes.
To All Politics is Local, the Maryland edition. And so that's the name of our podcast.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because I enjoyed being one of your first guests, I believe, on the podcast, sharing about the Denney House, our nonprofit.
Yes.
That in the work that we do in the community and how much we align as it relates to just that, advocacy and all that good stuff, all that good jazz.
Right.
Supporting people in the community, supporting, individuals who don't have a voice and, raising our voices to support them, right?
Right.
So how has the podcast space, you just told us about your award or your ranking, if you will.
Right. You put me on the spot because I'm trying to remember the name of the organization. I've been so busy with some other endeavors now that I can't remember, but I just remember getting this email and I was so excited. So I told my executive producer and other folks, editors, all the folks that are working. I was like, well, thank you, because I feel like I haven't put as much work as I needed to put it in. But my podcast, like I said, it ranked number 7 above Bob Ehrlich, who is the former governor of Maryland, and his wife has a podcast, and it came just under former Lieutenant Governor Michael Steele. Podcast. So I feel pretty privileged that we're doing
I must say you're in good company because a lot of us who are overachievers feel like we're not doing enough. Right?
Okay, right.
And, the world or, those who, are looking in are telling us, oh, you're doing such a great job. But we always can see the ways that we can improve. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
So I'm just as proud as I can be to be a part of such a successful podcast.
Yes. And your segment, just to kind of explain, I do 2 things. The goal of the podcast, and one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on, is because of the good work that I know you do in the community, but how you work with young adults, I don't even know what to call them, the Gen whatever, millennials, the Gen Z.
What are you, a Gen Y? A Gen, so it's not Gen Z, Gen X, Generation X, okay.
All of those. But it was twofold. One, to educate the younger generation on politics and how it impacts them and what local government and civics and all of those types of subjects, why it's important to be involved and engaged. But the other thing I wanted to report on is the fact that we hear so much negative news. And I said, I'm going to start a network called, instead of CNN, I was going to say GNN, Good News Network.
Yes.
And so I wanted to feature, so I have a segment that's good news. And I wanted to feature good news that's going on in the community that you're doing that involves young people, Gen X type people. And so you immediately came to mind. I was like, Khalilah Denny and the Denney House, they are killing the game.
Yes, thank you.
And what they do here in the community and all the young people and young adults that they're impacting and teaching them a trade and skill. So I really, admire you and love the work that you do.
Thank you.
And so I wanted you to be one of the first persons that we interviewed in terms of getting the good news out about what we're doing. And I got to invite you back.
Yeah.
Because I know you got some good stuff going on, and now that you got your own podcast,
yes, ma'am.
we gotta reciprocate.
Yes, ma'am. So I appreciate that. We are continuing to do the good work, serving our youth and our returning citizens. Oh yes, thank you.
Accolades.
I'm just so grateful to just continue to be able to do something that I love, that I enjoy, and that, brings me joy. You know what I mean?
Right.
For so long I worked in, corporate America, if you will, and I was not happy. I was just working for a paycheck. So when I was able to start my own business, even start this nonprofit, I was forced into it. But, I'm glad I was forced into it. It's sometimes I was sharing with a young lady recently that, sometimes we're not looking at the right, if you get let go or fired from a job, it's not necessarily, a loss. It might be a win for you. It might be pushing you into that desired purpose God had for you. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was pushed into that desired purpose. I was already doing the work part-time. Right. And then, I decided, I'm going to just go all in when I lost my job. And this is what I've been doing ever since with this and my for-profit Denney's Consulting, which is why we're here, supporting other nonprofits, helping them grow. And, just working with people in the community. So you're one of those good people. And we want to talk a little bit about your advocacy, the work that you do. I want to share with people like just the success that you have today. Tell us a little bit about your work in advocacy.
So my work in advocacy really started, and I hope I'm not jumping the gun, but I do feel like I need to kind of tell the whole story. Because I know we were going to talk about my upbringing. Yeah,
well, let's start there. Because I might have jumped the gun with that question. So, and keep me in line. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Keep me in line. So let's start with your upbringing.
Well, what really got me interested, and I wouldn't even say interested, I was drug into, and I use this term, my parents used to drag us to city council meetings, PTSA meetings, school board meetings, this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And, I had no idea what was going on. I just knew that we were going to another, something civic, some city council meeting, and my dad was getting up to speed, or my mom was getting up to speed about some issue and some redress that they wanted in their community.
Right.
And so it's just been instilled in me to be a person that keeps our elected officials accountable. And I remember this story, and I always like to tell this story. My mom, we were in a city council meeting, and my mom I think I was in the 3rd grade. My mom kind of like leaned over to me, and she's like, "You see those people up there?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she said, "Those people, our tax dollars pay for their salary. They're accountable to us."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
that's a good lesson.
Yep, I've always remembered that. And then she went on to tell me what we were there for. I have no idea.
You can't remember to this day.
I can't remember.
But I'm sure she was shouting to
7 years old, 3rd grade, like, okay, back to coloring in my coloring book or whatever I was doing to occupy my time.
Now, did you grow up here in Prince George's County?
I actually grew up, not in Prince George's County. I actually grew up in Houston, Texas. That's where my family is, and that's where I was born and raised. Okay. I came to the Washington, D.C. area and actually moved to Prince George's County in 1988 when I was in law school. I got accepted to Howard's Law School. Okay. And I ended up staying with a friend of mine's family who I went to undergraduate with. They lived in Fort Washington, right off of Palmer Road, 210 and Lynn Allen Acres. And I decided that I really liked Prince George's County. I liked the fact that it was, at that time it was still, Glendenning was, I think, still the county executive, but Wayne Curry was, coming through and becoming our first black, African American county executive, and the county was really progressing. And I liked the southern area of the county because it
felt a little bit like home.
It felt a little bit like home. I like the ruralness. I'm used to, I live off of Piscataway Road down from Piscataway Stables. Right, so the horses there and all that stuff, and the farmers market, in Texas they have what they call, my daughter asked me this recently, like, what is this road? What does FM stand for? And the road is called FM, whatever number, 1960. It stands for farmers market, because that road leads you to the farmers market, literally. So, but that I kind of fell in love with, just that ruralness, the local farms and this and that. And But I've been here, I decided to practice law the type of law that I practice, I actually need to be in Washington, D.C. to do it because it's a federal practice, administrative practice. It's telecommunications. I can get into that later, but I knew I needed to be in this area in order to pursue that type of
the career
law
that you wanted.
The career that I wanted. Yep.
Okay.
And so that's kind of how I got started and got to Prince George's County, and I've been living in out of Council District 8 or Council District 9 the entire time, mostly 9 because I lived in Fort Washington just those 3 years, and then I moved to I was in Acton for a year, and then I got the current home that I'm in now, and I've been in that home for over 30 years.
Oh wow, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So you said that you went to law school at Howard University.
Yes.
And so how was that experience coming from Texas to Howard U?
Right, that was amazing. Absolutely amazing. I to this day, I'm just so grateful for the education that I got at Howard, because it really opened my mind and expanded my mind, and it also helped instilled in me to be the community activist that I am, because we're taught to be social engineers. And what a social engineer is that it doesn't matter what type of law you practice or what you do, you use your legal skills to benefit your community.
Right.
And you use your legal skills to help somebody else and to help the overall, if you will, social, economic, and political impact of African American communities. And that's always kind of been my vision, not my vision, but my drive, because that was so instilled in us. It's like, we don't care if you practice tax law, we don't care if you practice corporate law, we don't environmental, you got to come back and help use it to help your community. So that's been my push, always remembering those lessons at Howard Law School, and it was phenomenal. I loved it.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So once you left Howard Law School, what did it look like for you? Did you go into private practice, or did you work for the government? How did your career start once you left Howard?
Once I left Howard, I actually had a job waiting for me at a law firm that specialized in telecommunications law. So that's my specialty. I do specifically wireless telecommunications before the Federal Communications Commission. And so I went to work for what they call a boutique law firm, because they were very highly specialized.
Right.
And that's where I cut my teeth and learned a lot, because at that time, I graduated in 1991, cellular was not out. It wasn't as popular. Only the rich and the famous had those big brick phones back in the day, or it was kind of what they call a walkie-talkie type stuff. But I used to represent a lot of private companies that push-to-talk technology, and that technology parlayed itself to what they call PCS, Personal Communication Service, and then that became the ubiquitous cell phone service that we all know. Right. And so I love what I do, because the technology is always changing, and the law is trying to catch up with the technology. Yeah. So it's always
you're always learning something new.
Yeah, because I'm always learning something new. It's always a new legal issue. It's like, oh, what do you think about that? If the technology does this, how does it affect that? Like now, the big thing is AI, and how do we kind of either rein it in a little bit, because there's some negative impacts that we can see, just like you can now see the negative impacts of social media on teens. And you probably saw, at least I saw recently, how the Surgeon General is saying we need warnings, and children don't need cell phones before high school, which is something.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of that. Yeah.
And so the technology is always changing, and you gotta figure out, what's that social impact? If I take my Howard trained law degree, what does that impact? How does that impact negatively or positively on the African American community, and what kind of laws and what kind of changes need to occur in order to make sure that our quality of life is not decline or is actually improved.
Right. Well, I'm glad you touched on that, because I wanted to know how that translates into the work that you do to support your community. How does the laws that govern the technology space, how does that help you to give back and support and serve your community?
I kind of keep those two things separate in terms of my law practice and then what I do as a community activist. What I do as a community activist is what I hope to be and hope people benefit from is that they are educated and engaged about what their local, state, and federal government is doing. Mostly local and state. I'm more concerned because that impacts you the most. What happens in Congress sometimes is such, well, not over your head, but such high level that it may or may not trickle down to how it affects you. Some of it does. Yeah. Some of it does, and a lot of it does. And I see you kind of doubting me on that one.
No, I just have my own opinions, and I'm thinking about it from the same lens. I do believe that local and state governance, the laws and things at the local level impact you more. Right. But I also think that the things that happen in Congress also impact you. I think a lot of times as you're probably alluding to, we get so caught up in the presidential elections and all of that, and we forget about how important it is at a local level to vote for people who have the same goals, have the same core values as you, who want to see the same things improve in your community that you do. Because if you don't, if you don't focus on that, if you don't vote for those individuals, you don't really get a chance or have the right to even, gripe about the fact that maybe the laws are changing in the school systems. Especially when it comes to, certain things like your school board. If you're elected, those people that you elect for the school board are a driving force that, tells you what's going to happen in your public schools. And if you want your kids to go to public school, you want to know who these people are, what their core values are, what they stand for, and how they're going to govern the school system that's going to benefit your children. So
that's right.
I'm with you. I just was like, it's still important.
It's important. It's important.
Yeah.
But what I think, and you said it exactly, it hit the nail on the head. So many people want to vote in that presidential election, and then when the local elections come around, it's like, okay, I'll vote for the person that looks the prettiest on the poster, or the person that I've seen the most. I got so much mail from this person, so I'm gonna vote for them. Never do their homework. Never. Yeah. So what I try to do is I try to make it easy for them. I try to help our local Prince Georgians to say, these are the people that are running. Here's a website where you can find out some information about them. Yeah. Or these are the issues, like in November, there are going to be ballot initiatives. And every presidential cycle, there's always a ballot initiative, and we always vote on ballot initiatives. And I don't want to go into the weeds on that. But, people don't know what these questions are asking. So what I try to do is use my legal degree and break down, because a lot of it is written in legalese, and sometimes it's meant intentionally to be confusing. Yeah. So and a lot of times we only see it the day of election, and we haven't seen it before, haven't read it before, don't understand what it is, but we're actually making a selection that's uninformed. Exactly. So what I try to do is, in advance of that, read it, do the research, and tell you, hey, this is what this is asking you to do, and this is how it's going to impact you. Yeah. And I give the pros and the cons, and I try not to give my personal opinion. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I say, I'm not voting this way, or I don't like this legislation or this bill because. Yeah. But that's just my personal opinion. Right. I still want you to do the legwork, but at least I've given you the background information. I try to be as neutral as possible. Yeah. Give you the background information, let you know what whether it's a bill, whether it's something that you're voting on, whether it's any piece of legislation that is coming out, what you need to vote on, and, what you need to know in order to make an informed decision. Because it's so unfortunate that we don't make informed decisions, and we can see the results of that, particularly at the national level, and we can definitely see it at the local level. And then we kind of wonder why did this happen? Why did they approve this? But why did they approve this development and they still didn't widen the roads? Or why did they approve this and we still have the same old rundown schools?
Yeah, well, I can appreciate the fact that you have done that for several years. As long as I've known you, since 2018, I've seen that piece always be consistent with you. Whether, like you said, whether it's those issues that we're checking yes or no on, or whether it's the individuals who are running for election and being able to just share their information. I've been the recipient of a lot of those emails that has really helped me just be able to, okay, now I got it in front of me, I'm reading it, and so now I can go and do my own research, but it just opened my eyes to some things. Like I was just telling our cameraman here, Q, that I'm not even aware of who's planning on running right now. Like I'm not seeing as much, I guess, information just yet as who's coming out for county council. We're seeing some people dropping off, some things are happening in the news, there's some new seats that are available. So it's like I'm looking for that information. So I know something's going to come out soon from you, sharing with what's happening in District 9 and what's happening in Prince George's County. So I look forward to that.
Good.
Yeah.
And please share it.
Yes, I do.
I always say at the bottom of my emails, and I send out blast emails, and the reason I start the podcast because I know the Gen Xers are not reading emails, and it's all social media and what have you. But I do for my generation and above and older, and our seasoned seniors, they still
they
check.
Still read. They still want their paper. They still want the tangible thing they can hold and the black and white.
Yes. Yeah. And then they pass it on to others. So I'm hopeful that the information is getting disseminated and people know. And I always make myself available to answer questions. I try to make sure I check my emails so that if somebody has a question about something I did, or sometimes I don't disclose how I'm voting or how I feel. Some people will come out straight out what? Okay, just tell me what you gonna do.
Exactly.
And then I'll have that conversation with them privately. Or send them an email privately. It's like, okay, but I don't want this disseminated. This is just me telling you how I personally feel. But I never try to impose my will or my decisions. I want you to come to your own informed decision. Right,
and that's good to have that position, because you don't want to force or push on anybody anything really, but you just want to give them some insight. Sometimes people don't want to ask the questions, but they do want they want to know what you're thinking. They want to know what, and for me, it's important for me to understand who I am and what matters to me. But I also want to hear, some insight from my peers, the people around me, what they're thinking, because they may have a different perspective that I never thought about. Not to say that I'm going to go with or sway with the wind, but it's important to hear, more than just one side of the story. There's so many different levels that people can bring to the table. They think different, so it may, give you some insight that you didn't think about to change your mind. So. Speaking of that, you've had a political career of your own, right? That you've at least,
I've attempted to have one, right? Political career many times.
Let's talk about it.
Well, I think because of the advocacy that I was doing for the community, whether it was on our children's PTSA, I was active in our children's PTSA. I think I was secretary and the liaison to the county's PTSA program that they had, and because I was in those meetings and going to the county council meetings, going to Annapolis to testify on bills and this and that, I felt like I had something that I could contribute, and that I had an insight, not necessarily of politics, because I don't see myself as a politician.
Okay.
I definitely see myself as a community activist, and I see myself as, someone who likes to do investigation, someone who likes to read and make sure I understand.
Yeah.
I don't always, I don't know all the answers, but I know how to get the answers. I know how to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And that's some legal training.
Understood.
You may not know the answer, but you know how to ask the right questions to get the answers that you need.
So when you say you're not a politician, you consider yourself a community activist. Give us a definition of that.
So I think a community activist is a person who is, just as the word said, active in the community, but not only active, but as an advocate. So if there is an issue that I think needs to be addressed or redressed, let's use your platform, for example. And you and I have had this conversation. I have a pet peeve, excuse me, about trash. I cannot stand. My mom used, as I told you, we had our own litter pickers and litter pickup, and I would go. My mom would make me go up and down the block, pick up this trash. So now I have a pet peeve about it, and it really bothers me. So, I'm just using this as an example, but with a lot of so I would always contact at a 311, say, hey, there's dumping here, there's litter here, there's whatever, and then I'm noticing that people are not, they will call me and say, well, did you see that they dumped them? I'm like, yeah, you can call 311 yourself, right? And so I kind of noticed that people weren't, they were kind of dependent on me to either be the activist and the advocate, which I didn't mind, but that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so I was like, well, you need to call too, not just me. You call, and then you call. Everybody call. If everybody is calling, at some point it's going to get some attention from someone. Because there's so much attention. It's like, okay, well, we really need to go see and pick up this, this illegal dumping, on Piscataway Road or, Thrift Road, wherever, it may be in the county. And what I'm really happy about is that one of our state senators has taken it upon himself, because the outcry was countywide at some point, and he said, okay, we got to get.
I think it still is. I think
it still is.
A crisis for us. I feel like we're in a crisis when it comes to the trash and the illegal dumping all over the county.
And I know some of it is us, because I've seen people literally throw out McDonald's bags, chicken, riding down, because I'm off a main street and another main street. So my house is right at the corner, and I'm outside just about every day picking up trash. And yesterday it was McDonald's, somebody's Happy Meal, and
so it is some but I think it is a lot of people coming into the county.
Also, I contribute that also, and I used to always contribute it to the folks further south in Charles County, because at one point, although they've changed now, they didn't have, the bulk trash pickup.
Right.
And between Charles County and the southern part of Prince George's County, there's a lot of unlit roads it's really easy to just pull up and dump something over the county line.
Right.
And then the other thing I attributed to, and I would wish that our county council would do this, is that there's no bulk trash pickup for any apartment complexes. So and we're building more multifamily units all over the county, but particularly in Prince George's County, and I would like to see them require the landlords to at least once a month, once a quarter, bring in a dumpster, have your residents do all their bulk trash, take it out, take it to the dumpster. They charge whatever fee that they charge them, but we need to consider that as well, because apartment dwellers don't have that access as homeowners
Right.
that we do. So I think that's important.
Yeah,
But
well,
I use that as an example
Mhm.
of the type of advocacy.
mhm.
So I'll,
So you're speaking up for those who,
Who-
either don't want to use their voice or don't have a voice.
right.
You become that voice.
And then I mobilize. I try to
Mhm.
mobilize people that do want to speak up, that have gotten just so frustrated
Right.
that they're ready for action. So it's either drafting a petition, like, okay, we're going to write our county council person, we're going to write the Senate,
Yeah.
we're going to write Annapolis, we're going to write the governor, we're going to write Congress.
Yeah.
So I try to help do that as well, and then do it in a way that it's received on the other end.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So that action can
that's the
actually
action. That's
can
right.
actually occur. Right.
Okay, well, I'm glad you broke that down. That's pretty much what I thought, but just for those who
Right.
may not know, I'm glad you were able to break that down for us. But so I see that in pretty much everything I know about you as it relates to just advocacy and seeing you out in the community, supporting domestic violence and supporting. When I say supporting domestic violence, I mean, advocating for those who are, experiencing that sort of thing.
Right.
Tell us a couple of other things that you are heavily involved in as it relates to the advocacy.
Sure. So I think the biggest thing, and the thing that I'm probably most known for, and to some people, quote unquote, the developers, I'm into making sure that we develop our county in a way that's sustainable.
Yeah.
I'm not against development.
No.
I want improvement. I want to
Right.
see nice things come to our county. I want to see nice homes. I want to see, nice townhouses, even multifamily. But I want it done in a way that's sustainable.
That's
And
right.
that it doesn't just saturate us.
Yeah.
And that we are
Overcrowded. Our roads are,
we still have the same 2-lane roads. I mean, coming here, even though it was a little after rush hour, I took the back way past Costco Park up to, because I was like,
that was smart.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not coming to that intersection of Old Branch, Piscataway, Woodyard.
Yeah, that's a
'cause
mess.
I would have been late.
Yeah.
So, but one of the big things that I'm trying to make sure that we do as we build, because this area, District 9, is the area of what we call the last bastion of developable land.
Yeah.
Because there's so many
There's so many farms
and whatever.
Yeah, a lot of rural property.
Right. And those persons, their children don't want to farm. All right,
Right.
sell that land, divide that up, and give us our money, give us our inheritance.
Oh my goodness.
And I can't
So
fault
true.
them for that. I
Yeah.
can't fault them for that. But in the meantime, I've driven to Miss Johnson. Is it Sheila Johnson? Yeah. I'm trying to remember. Make sure I'm saying her first name. Sheila Johnson, who was who's part owner of the Mystics. The monumental sports, and she has her. She just acquired the former Mandarin Hotel, which she now has. I don't know why the name of her resort is escaping me. It'll come to me in a minute, but like in any event, driving to her hotel and resort and golf community out in Virginia, you pass some of the same, in my mind, landscape that you kind of see in the rural tier. They don't want us to say rural tier anymore, but the southern part of Prince George's County. Farms, wineries, all of those things. But they are starting to develop out, and I believe that's Loudoun County. I can't remember for sure, but they're still starting to develop out in those areas. But what they're doing is, and I know some of the reason, but they're putting in the infrastructure first. They're widening the roads.
Right.
They're putting in all of the infrastructure first before
They move the individuals, the people, and all that into it.
New schools are being built for these new communities.
Yeah.
New middle schools, and a new rec center. All those things are coming up with the community. Here in Prince George's County, we do the exact opposite. we're building and letting the people come, and then we'll figure out the roads later. You know, we'll put a turn in lane. You know, 100. Half a mile, if that even, if not that length, but quarter mile in and out. And that's all we do. We don't widen the roads. So my big thing has been to try to advocate for infrastructure improvement and development, as opposed to just allowing it unfettered. Now, part of the problem in the southern part of the county is that the county does not actually own the land. Like, they own a lot more land in the central and the northern part of the county than they do.
But not in the southern,
And not in the southern. So they can't really tell, you know, the heirs to these farms, like, well, what to do with their land. Because we don't own it, you know, unless we take actual eminent domain of it somehow. And, you know, and that may be something that we need to really consider doing more of in the southern part of the county, to say, hey, we need to take this land to use it for this purpose for everybody, not just, you know, just your family and what have you. But that's part of our problem in the southern part of the county. But there has to be a happy median, and that's what I try to communicate to developers and people who are, you know, wanting to subdivide the land and put, you know, 1,000 townhomes on, you know, maybe 4 to 5 acres. Or so. So, and I know that's, I'm exaggerating. I'm exaggerating, but, you know, it is sometimes not many, you know, they'll try to subdivide the land so much that it's, you know, you're really right on top of each other, and then you come out on a 2-lane road. And so those issues have been what has been driving me for the most part. So it's not just, when I say infrastructure, public safety. You know, we have the same in Clinton. We still have the same volunteer fire department. We don't have a professional fire department here in Clinton. They just built a professional fire department in Brandywine, thank goodness. But the calls for service and the time it takes you to get to those calls, it's critical. You know, if I'm having a heart attack, I don't want you to be stuck, you know, on Woodyard Road trying to get to me. I want you to be able to get to me and serve, you know, and prevent me from dying.
That's right.
You know, so those are the kind of things that I'm looking, you know, really trying to focus on. And lately, you know, having big community meetings, bringing the stakeholders, so that people know who to contact. Well, this is the person in the Park and Planning Department. This is the person in the Department of Public Works and Transportation. This is a person in Department of Permitting, Inspection, and Enforcement that you need to contact about some of the issues that you have. And so far, I'm seeing that people are being a little bit more proactive in that. So,
well, if you share those kinds of resources with us, we'll definitely get it out to the community for sure. So keep us in mind as you're developing things and making it neutral. You know, we can definitely share that out with the community. So with all that being said, and I hear the passion you have behind, you know, making sure that our community members are considered when, you know, development happens. What's next for you? What do you see yourself doing next?
Well, I'm still interested in serving in a political office. I have not given up, even though I've come so very close so many times, and I still have not given up. And I see different things. Sometimes I want to give up, and I was like,
you can't. You've got so many people, you know, who voted with you. There's so many who support you and support the work, and they understand and get the vision, and they have the same desires that you have. So that's why they said yes. And voted for you. And
thank you.
So
thank you.
So you have to keep trying, in my opinion. So
So, as you know, and you kind of alluded to earlier, there's a open seat that just opened up with the resignation of former District 9 council member, but his seat currently right now is the at-large council seat. So I was kind of considering that. I was talking to my strategist, and he's like, he's not giving me the okay to pursue that. But I did think on it a little bit over the weekend.
So what about November versus?
Well, November. Remember, we're in a presidential
that's right.
cycle.
Okay.
So the presidential cycle, we're only voting for Senate if a Senate seat is open, because the Senate term is longer. For Congress, the House of Representatives, they run every 2 years.
Okay.
So we're only going to be voting for our congressperson and our state. There is a state Senate seat because in Maryland, Ben Cardin resigned. He stepped down. He's not running again. He's retiring. And so we are going to be voting for a state senator. We still have Senator Chris Van Hollen. His seat will he'll have to run for re-election the next presidential cycle, but not this one. So it's
when's the next county?
The statewide offices is not until 2026.
2026.
So I still have some time, to consider. But my heart and soul, like I said, we've been in our house for 30-something years in Clinton, and my heart and soul is still always District 9.
Yeah.
And so that's mostly first priority and first interest for me is to pursue that. But I did, I got interested, when that little bit, I was like, oh, okay, something's coming up over here.
Yeah.
Let me think about it. But
if you've got a plan,
I haven't totally ruled it out because, this is so new. I think the council met last night to set the dates of when the special election is going to be and all of that. They haven't actually formally announced it. I have not heard any news, so I'm not breaking any news here. But I think they voted last night of when they want to do it, what the dates are going to be, and all of that. And I think they'll release that. It probably most likely.
I'm sure it was a public hearing.
No, it wasn't a public hearing because it's a decision of the council.
Okay. Teach me, because clearly I don't know what I'm talking about. It's a decision
of the council because I think our charter says that if a county council person resigns and there's still 2 years or more left on their term, or not resign, but leave office for whatever reason. It could be resignation, it could be unfortunately if they pass away or whatever. You have to have a special election. Yeah. If it was a little later in the session, later in the term, like the term was almost over, and
they can appoint somebody.
They can appoint somebody, right? Okay. Right. So, I'm assuming a publication is going to be coming out, press release or something is going to be coming out next week at the earliest. In announcing the dates, and then the filing deadlines for those who are interested, and so we'll see. And I'll be sending out some information. Okay, awesome. as I normally do, and we just want we want the best for our county, and we want good candidates and people that. And this is why I talk about not being a politician. It's okay to, I think, to have, build those relationships because politics is that you've got to build relationships, it's compromise, give and take. Right. You're not going to always agree on, what's the right course. Yeah. But you got to be able to work together and, and make some compromise. But we don't need what I consider people as like career politicians, if they're just trying to, move from one position to the next and never are, I won't say never are satisfied, but just they may be in it for the wrong reason. I'll just put it that way.
Well, I hear you on that. I'd like to see those who are moving from one position to another. It's because they're actually affecting change.
Change, yes.
And that's positive for our community. So I'd love to see that,
Right.
be a consistent
Right.
mirror of those that we have, elected
Right.
currently. So with the priorities that you've set out just pretty much just now with development and trash and beautification of our community, if you were to say tip your get your toe wet in that special election, are there any other priorities you think you would want to share?
That's a good question.
When you think back to what your constituents shared and were most passionate about,
Well, what I think about in terms of, particularly if it's at large, what I'm hearing most of. I went to the Brandywine North Keys Civic Association meeting last night, and they met. Normally they meet at Brandywine Elementary School, and they met this time at the new community center in Timothy Branch, which is the new big development behind the Costco and all of that. So what I'm hearing are people are concerned about public safety because, unfortunately we've got these band of teenagers that have nothing else to do but break into people's cars and carjack and this and that. So they're concerned about public safety. But again,
it's such a small group of individuals that just mess it up for everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
So definitely looking at public safety. But again, I attribute some of that to overdevelopment because, if we had enough officers to be able to patrol the area, and District 9 is the largest landmass wise, space wise, mileage wise. You've got enough officers to patrol all of that area. You could probably cut down on some of that because you're seeing the police officers more frequently patrolling your area. You're less likely to try something.
Yeah, but I also think that if we had more outlets, more opportunities for kids for the youth to express themselves, have some fun,
right.
In a way where it's safe, and that is I think a concern too. I think a lot of times, they're left to their own devices, and there's really nothing for them to do.
Right.
So, we need to provide more opportunities.
Well, that's what we have park and planning for, and I think park and planning can potentially, and I've seen them make great efforts, with their extreme teams programs and trying to have basketball sessions at night, all of those things to kind of help bring our young people, together.
I wonder if they're talking to the young people, like if they're having conversations with them to understand what it is or what they want versus doing what they think should happen.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we as the older, seasoned, individuals, we get in a room and we have a conversation about what we think they need and what we think they want and what we feel should be happening, and we're not actually listening or having some input from that generation to tell us what their desires are, what's lacking in their homes, or what they need, right? And it plays a major role, I think, in the reason why some of the youth are being pulled into a certain direction or into a certain group, because there's one getting the attention that they weren't getting before. They've got someone who's listening, someone's paying attention to them, and now that they're, they have that individual has their ear, they're giving them the things that we don't want them to have. But if we had more of an open mind to bring them in and hear what they have to say and listen to their concerns and take that seriously and actually act on what we hear from them, I feel like we'll have less of the crime that we're having now. I don't think it's going to ever go away, because I know every generation says, they weren't as bad back in my day, but it was always something
Right.
happening. There was always somebody there's always somebody who's just going to be a rotten egg,
Right.
But there is several kids who would probably choose differently if they had other access to opportunities and other outlets and people actually listening to them. Because
Right.
we always want to also say that, we need to get with these parents and figure out what they're doing. And, that's always been the case too. And sometimes they just need a little help. I still believe that it takes a village to raise a child. I don't care, what anyone says. It doesn't, these days, nobody knows. We don't know our neighbors. We're not saying hello. We don't have that same, I feel, the environment that I grew up in. Like my mom, we lived in an apartment, but everybody in the apartment building knew each other.
Right.
It wasn't nothing I could do that nobody,
Right.
and nobody, would go back to my mom and tell, or, if something was to happen and they were there and my mom wasn't there, they straightened me up, you know what I mean?
Right.
And we don't have that community like we used to. So
Right.
I'm trying to build that. And as you said, I try to make sure that this is a safe space, that people come in here, they feel like, they've got a voice, they, can do what it is that they, feel will help them, grow and mature as an individual. And I expose the youth to opportunities, to careers and things that they wouldn't typically think about, because the only thing you see on TV is, I can be a doctor or a basketball player or a lawyer, and some of them, they feel like that may be unattainable. And there's other options that they can choose that will help them to, gain a skill. They can gain a skill, they can do a career, they can work for themselves, and they can, gain wealth in a way that, doesn't require them to rob anyone or steal anybody's car. Right. So I'm sorry, I'm off my soapbox on
That's
that
okay.
one.
No. And I appreciate the work you're doing in that, giving it's landscaping.
Yeah. Landscape management. Yeah. Heavy equipment.
And I know someone that lives in District 9 right now. I used to go to church with him. There's a thriving landscaping business, and he, and his business is taking him literally all over the world. I mean, he posts, well, some of these
he
are
must do
vacations.
hardscape. Yeah.
Some of them, he's just posting on vacations that he's taking and this and that. But some of the projects that he has gotten because of the landscaping business, and he's doing quite well.
Everybody needs that these days, especially with even COVID. I think most people don't even realize it, and maybe they do now. COVID exposed the fact that we're in our homes more now, and everybody's looking around. They want it to look beautiful, and landscaping was one of the industries that shot up, and it's still going up.
Yeah. So, no, I wholeheartely agree with you. But we were talking about, some of the initiatives. So, public safety would be one. The other that I'm hearing a lot about is just the ability to manage the county's budget. I think the county council just approved the budget, but we were facing a deficit, and there was little whispers about potentially raising taxes. And what I heard last night was, we pay a lot in taxes, but we don't get the services that we have. And so, how do we manage our budgets a little bit better? And this is where the federal government can come in more in terms of making sure that we're applying for those federal dollars.
Yes.
That we don't have to tax our citizens so much, because let's face it, and it's I've heard it 1,000 times, but it's absolutely true. We are a county of residents and not a lot of business and big industry business that can pay the corporate tax dollars that maybe a Montgomery County or Fairfax or Alexandria are getting. And so until we change that paradigm, and I know that the county council and the county executive are really working hard to try to do that, but until we do so, we need to come up with other areas of how to get dollars into our community. And I think that's where we have our partnership with our federal partners.
Yes.
So at the federal level, there are so many federal grants. And one of the things that I do in my day-to-day job, I actually have a broadband business where we are working to provide high-speed internet service to the rural and underserved areas.
Okay.
And so I know for a fact that there are several federal grants out there that our county can do a better job in terms of whether it's housing, affordable housing, whether it's anything with rural agricultural, just a lot of federal grants that we need to take advantage of a little bit more in terms of getting money to pay for services that we have or that we need to push out to our residents that won't be a tax burden to them. Because guess what? It's still our tax dollars, because guess what? The money that the federal government comes from us.
Yeah, right.
You know,
that's right.
So either way, we're still paying for it, but we might as well be able to
reap the benefit.
Reap the benefit of those federal tax dollars as well as what we can get from the state and at the local level, and not try to, continue to raise taxes and so forth. So, just looking for other creative ways to do that. And I think the other thing that the pandemic has done is bring about more philanthropic work from bigger foundations. And when I'm talking about bigger foundations, Ford foundations, the huge amount, they're starting to look for ways that they can help individual communities.
Yeah,
and I think
is doing that now too.
Yes. And so we also need to tap in. So if they're not moving here to do business here, throw some dollars, towards some of the projects and some of the things that we want to have done here. And I think those partnerships we could do, would be something that would be a priority for me.
Yeah, awesome.
Yep.
Well, that sounds like something that we can get behind for sure.
Yep.
If there was anything you wanted to share as it relates to your business, because you just spoke about you have a broadband business. That's the first time I've heard about it.
Okay.
I'm gonna flip the script just a little bit. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the work you're doing there.
So again, because of telecommunications, one thing that I learned way back in 1993 was that I was actually working, and I was doing this work, and I knew what our hourly rate was as a law firm. And I was thinking to myself, but I was like, these people are paying us this amount of money in order to do this filing, do this work. They have to be making good money in order to do it, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I need to be on the business side.
Okay.
And not necessarily always on the legal side.
Yeah.
So I always thought, I said that in 1993, and I've always thought that I wanted to do something in the telecommunications realm. So we kind of talked about when it was the cellular service first came out, and they came out with what was, well, first I actually thought about was owning towers. Telecommunications towers. When I said, well, then you got to own the land, or at least lease the land. I don't have any property other than my own home, and I'm definitely not putting a tower. Although we probably need a tower, because I lose signal sometimes in our area going down some of those little valleys. But I thought about doing that. And then I thought about the big wave that they came in for, at the time it was called, the Federal Communications Commission called it the PCS, Personal Communication Service. And that's before they, started calling it the cell phones or the mobile phones or what have you. But they really engineered that for larger companies, for the Verizons and the AT&Ts and all of that. They didn't engineer it for the smaller person. But it wasn't until I actually ran for county council in District 9.
Okay.
I was knocking on doors in the rural area of Prince George's County, literally in the rural tier. I think I was in Baden, Nequasco or somewhere. And when I say your door knocking, I was literally knocking, getting in my car, driving the next half a mile
to the next house.
That I heard that people was like, well, I just need and they found out I was telecommunications attorney. They said, well, we just need access to the internet here.
Right.
I was like, you guys don't have access to the internet? You're only like a 15-minute drive before all the traffic was, right? You're only like a 15-20-minute drive from DC. How do you not have access to the internet? They won't come out here, blah, blah, blah. I was like, really? And I put 2 and 2 together.
The light bulb went off.
The light bulb went off. And I said, I am going to start a broadband business with the focus. And the name of my company is called Last Mile Broadband.
Last Mile Broadband.
Of Maryland. And the tagline is that we go the distance to bring you the internet.
Okay.
And so, meaning that we'll go that last mile to get you the service you need. And I've been really big. My business partner is a former military, has done military telecommunications installation on military bases all over the world, so he knows this stuff like the back of his hand. I met him, believe it or not, at a function. I didn't realize he lived in Akakeek, only 10 minutes away from me, but I met him at a function for another form, kind of a political function for a former county executive of ours for the county. And I kept his card. I was like, I'm gonna need this guy's card. I kept his card, and I just called him out of the blue and said, this is the name of the company. This is what we do. Do you want to start this business? Because I can see. I said, in our own backyard, there are people. I've knocked on their doors. I know. And he said yes, and we got started and off to the races. Now, as unfortunate as the pandemic has been, it's been a boom for our business because now, at first, it was really, really tough because we couldn't get the funding. We were applying for things, and it was like nobody. It's not that they didn't believe us, but it's just like they didn't see that there was a need. Then when the pandemic hit and everybody had to go online, to go to work, to school,
it brought everything to life.
It brought everything to life. And so a lot of what I do now is just like grant writing to get. That's why I mentioned those grants, because I know about them. I write the grants to get funding. We have been focused on HBCUs actually. And so we've got a project at Southern University in Louisiana. We're working with some other, one other guy that we know that has some access to other HBCUs that we're working on, and then we're trying to actually help the folks down in the Baton and the Quasco area. Luckily for, I won't say luckily for us because we actually didn't get the work, but because of our grant writing and advocacy, I think like the Comcast and the AT&Ts and the big boys kind of woke up and said, oh, there's a community down in southern Prince George's County that needs broadband and we're going to provide it for them. But nevertheless, I'm happy that it happened because I saw the need and now the need is being fulfilled. It just so happens it may not have been our company. I would have loved for it to have been our company, but nevertheless, there's still lots of areas that do not have access to the internet because they're not in a densely populated area and the big boys won't spend the money. Now, the interesting thing is since the Biden administration has said that we're making this a priority, it's almost like rural electrification, meaning when they brought lights out so that everybody had electricity, it's the same process.
Okay.
And so they're throwing money at it, and now the big boys want, oh, can we apply? It's like, no, you had an opportunity and you got the funds to do so,
and
but now
you
chose not to. Now you want to come in and then try to elbow us out the way, but we've been here all along. So, but we're making progress and we're making we're meeting some needs, and so I'm really happy about that.
I'm excited for you. So that's how many years that you've been
So I can't believe it's been as long as I thought it was. I think we formally filed in the state of Maryland, I believe, in 2014.
Okay.
So that means 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And like I said, we had some fits, stops and starts and all this other kind of stuff.
Well, you survived the pandemic. A lot of people can't say that.
Yeah, and like I said, the pandemic was a boom for us
Yeah.
because it brought to light what we were saying all along. And now that the federal government is starting to put federal funding behind it, now it's a lot easier for us to, get the grants and do the things that we need to do for that.
So how's all of this been on your family life? I know you're a wife, a mom. Like how is that, positively or negatively?
I bring them
impacted?
along. Some people have seen
Now, how
me.
many kids do you have?
We have 2.
Okay.
And they are grown adults now. We have a son. He will be 20. I can't believe it. He'll be 27 in August.
Yeah.
And our daughter will be 25 in November.
No, she's a big reason why you started the podcast.
The podcast,
too, right?
yes. She was the one that says, Mom, we not reading those emails. We ain't, you need to come up with the time, get on social media, and podcast. And so she's my executive producer. When I say executive producer,
that's her.
That's her. We have an idea for something to come up pretty soon around what's happening in the county with the open seat and what have you. So we're gonna be releasing something pretty soon. But so just like my parents drugged me to all those meetings when they were kids, I drugged them to all the meetings.
I got
and
you.
the good news is it's kind of rubbed off on them. At least my daughter for sure, but my son as well. They are very politically astute and they know how to ask the right questions and what have you, and advocate for themselves and what they want.
Good,
and so it's my husband's always been very supportive. I remember early days of running for office. He was the one. Now I've gotten quote unquote sophisticated, and I have a team that goes out and put up my signs.
Okay. I knew that's what it was.
I remember my husband and his brothers would be out there putting up signs and using the regular
the T-posts.
Yes, T-posts and all that stuff. And so we've come a long way, but he's always been very supportive. And it was him that if I couldn't drag the kids with me, he would be at home with the kids when they were younger, obviously.
It's so good to have that kind of support. Having my husband at home with the boys has been just a godsend. I would not be able to do a lot of the work that I've been able to do over the years if it wasn't for him. So
that's great. Yep. That's
strong man.
Yes. Yep. And that 100% never. Every once in a while, he was like, Tamara, maybe you shouldn't or whatever. But when he sees that my mind's made up and I'm going to do it, he's like, go ahead, go for it, go ahead.
Might as well get behind it. It's going to get ran over.
Exactly. And so he, always have been supportive. So they, I asked them this time, I was like, well, what do y'all think about it? And they always tell me, don't run again. You don't need to run again. This, that, and the other. And then
they see the stress that it costs.
Right.
But
and my daughter literally called me yesterday when all the news broke, and she was like, integrity matters. You really, you need to do it.
Yeah.
So, again, I've got a strategist that I, run things through. So even if I don't do any special election or anything, I'm content with the local District 9 and doing that. I really love this area. Like I said, that I was here, for the 3 years that I was in Fort Washington, but we were, Fort Washington is still very south. It is, yeah. It's still very, south. But then when I found Clinton and Accokeek, I lived in Accokeek for a year. I just kind of fell in love with the area, and I was like, oh wow, we're this close to the Potomac, we're this close to Fort Washington Park, we're this close to the Patuxent, just all of these things around natural. I like to walk, and so I'm not a gym person or a treadmill person. I like to go out. I was just at Casca Park walking the other day, just around the lake, and then I take the actual trails in Casca. They've got three trails. They need to do a little work on. I got to call them about that. It's got a couple of fallen trees on some areas, but just being out in nature and the quietness. I don't like to hear, like when I'm out walking, I don't like to hear cars. I don't mind hearing, I don't mind people and people talking and children playing.
But you don't want to hear
But I don't want to hear horns, and I don't want to hear
and
none of that.
Yeah.
And so I just like to get out and, walk in the park and enjoy nature and breathe fresh air, see the animals, whether it's birds or they got egrets and turtles around the
I love
the
that.
pond. Yeah.
We found a turtle here in our backyard.
We had one in our backyard.
We kept it for a little while, but it got too big for the tank, and then we released it at Costco Park.
Did you?
And all the kids, every time we go, they look for that turtle.
Do they know that there's like hundreds of turtles in that park?
Turtles in that park. Yes.
They looking for that one.
They looking for that one.
Y'all should put a mark on them or something.
Even if we did, it'd be gone by now, because
exactly.
they shed their,
right.
people don't realize that they shed that shell.
For the life of me, I can't figure out where the one that was in our backyard. It was a baby turtle.
Yeah.
So I was like, where's the mouse? So I brought it some like lettuce to feed it, and I'm like, there's got to be some parents somewhere.
Right. Never found the mouse.
And probably a couple of days later, it was gone.
It was gone.
Yep.
She said, you're not feeding my baby this little lettuce. We want real food out here. Look at this grass over here. It's like, let me stop. Well, this has been nice. You gotta come back when you're ready to announce and tell everybody what you're doing and
I gave everybody a little tease.
Gave us a little tease today, but yes, come back and share with us.
And you gotta come back.
I shall. I shall.
You gotta come back.
So if you had one last thing you wanted to leave our audience with, if it was something inspirational, something that you just feel like you wanna share to help those who maybe considering advocacy themselves, maybe considering being that voice for the voiceless, what would you leave them with?
Do it. Pick up the phone, call. As my mom told me, those people, our tax dollars paid for their salaries, they're accountable to you. So pick up the phone, write that email, send that note, write that letter. If you see them at an event, step to them. Speak truth to power. Truth to power. And I've started putting at the bottom of some of my emails, of course, I don't do it all the time. It just depends on the topic of the email. It's a quote that I've found from Plato that says that I know I'm not saying it correctly, but it's basically saying that if you're not involved in politics, you're allowing someone not as astute as you to rule over you.
Wow.
And so it's that whole speaking truth to power and asking for what you want, because power concedes nothing without a demand.
Yeah.
And so if that is the case, then you don't want to just take any and everything that whatever somebody is in office will give you.
Right.
You've got to make that demand, and so I encourage you to definitely
Speak truth to power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely make that demand and be heard.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I couldn't end it any better than that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
again
me.
for coming on the podcast.
Yes.
Thank you to you all for sticking around this long, and if you did, I hope you hit that follow button, like, and share this out. Share some comments down with us. Let us know how you feel about the content. If you like this content, for sure. And until next time, it's the Social Changemakers Podcast signing out.